you. Let's go live now to the Shadow Immigration Minister, Dan Tehan. He joins us now. Dan Tehan, thanks for your time. Let's look at the commitments made by the opposition leader in his budget reply. On international students, this year there were 177,000 commencements with international students. What would the number be next year under the coalition if you won the election?
Well, Kieran, what you have to understand is at the moment we're seeing net overseas migration in the first 2 years of the Albanese Labor government nearly reaching 1 million people. Now, what you want to do is make sure that we bring that number down, bring it down in a planned and methodical way so we can put more Australians into houses. Now, the government has said that they're going to put a cap in place when it comes to international students. So we've got to wait and see what that cap looks like, how they do it. As you'll remember, they announced that policy on the Saturday before the budget and then held meetings with the sector on the Monday in a sort of very chaotic, unplanned way, as they've done the whole way when it comes to dealing with migration. We've said that we'll have consultations with the sector, but as your listeners know, at the moment, the University of Sydney, 47% of their students are international students. Now, we think that that number is too high for any one tertiary organisation.
Sure.
They've made about $1.4 billion each year as a result of that. And remembering that's untaxed, that they also are getting public monies to educate Australian students. So once we've got a clear idea as to what the government aren't going to do, we will follow and outline exactly what we're going to do. But you've got to remember also that Peter Dutton...
So is that number's not locked in? So given you're waiting for what the government's doing, then the overall number you put out there, that's not a locked-in commitment?
Well, it's a locked-in commitment, but we've got to wait and see exactly what the government does with its cap, and then we will see what we would do when we put in place our cap. As you know, we've probably got 9, maybe 12 months till the next election, and the government rushed in a cap on the Saturday before the budget, once again just showing the chaotic approach that they're taking. So we've got to wait and see what that looks like, and then we will adjust our policies accordingly. But we've set our numbers.
So it sounds like the number...
What was
it doesn't sound like the number's locked in.
My speech was very... No,
because if you're going to adjust accordingly, the number's not locked in.
No, the number is locked in. And what I'll say also that we will do, and this is what Peter Dutton outlined in the budget in reply speech, which is an incredibly important policy initiative, and that is what we're seeing at the moment is a lot of the international students who are here at the moment are going on and taking additional courses once they get here. And what we will look at is very closely that policy approach, which is at the moment leading to international students coming here doing additional courses. We will look at addressing that issue, which can make a material difference to the number of international students who, once they come here, end up staying longer than was otherwise thought. So there is a number of policies that we will look at. This will be a policy suite which gets us to where we need to be.
Can you explain to our viewers today, so the opposition leader said 140,000 permanent migration, 160,000 net migration. So you haven't got much room to move. You're talking about a cap, but you'd be demolishing the international students industry, a third biggest export, wouldn't you? Given 140,000 permanent migration, net migration 160, it only leaves 20,000 there for you to work with in terms of temporary visas.
Now, there are 2.8 million temporary visa holders currently in Australia. 2.8 million temporary visa holders currently in Australia. We've got record numbers of international students currently in Australia. When you look at the government's net overseas migration forecast for this financial year, it is 395,000. Now, we think that they will not meet that, and we think that they put that number in the budget papers so they didn't have to admit that it would be well over 400,000, and it will be adjusted. I guarantee you it will be adjusted by the time we end the end of this financial year. So what we will do is we will have a proper, planned, methodical approach which will lead to those numbers coming down so we can put Australians into homes, so we can make
I understand
sure
that. So
that Australians
but you basically have to
rent
pause
properties.
You have to pause the sector. Is that what you're talking about? You're going to basically pause the international student sector? Because that's what you'd have to do.
No.
I'm just trying to get a bit of clarity. To get to that 160,000 number.
So to get to that 160,000 number, you put in place a suite of policies which get you there. So you've got to understand there are 2.8 million temporary visa holders in Australia at the moment. So there are a number of ways that you can bring this number down. For instance, the number of people who have sought asylum in Australia and who haven't been judged to be owed asylum, that number is around 78,000 at the moment. So that's people who applied for asylum in Australia and have failed to get that claim agreed. There's 78,000 of those at the moment. Now, about 2/3 of those are on work and study rights at the moment. Now, what we've got to do is we've got to be able to make sure those people sought to claim asylum, they weren't seen as genuine. So we've got to make sure that those people now leave Australia. That's one policy approach we'll be taking. As I've said, there's the international students who come here and then seek to prolong their stay here by applying for additional courses. Often those additional courses are at a lower level than the course they're taking at the moment. We need to deal with that. All this is about making sure we can put Australians into homes, that Australians can get access to rental properties at an affordable rate. But Grattan Institute has said for every additional 100,000 temporary visa holders, it puts the average rents up by about $100. So we've got to make sure that what we're doing will lead to less pressure being put on rents and less pressure being put on housing. And that's what we're seeking to do.
Shadow Immigration Minister Dan Tehan, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kieran.